Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Newcastle Fast FM. And it is the show that we do every single Wednesday at 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock. It is From Darkness to Light with myself, Richard Coupland. Alhamdulillah, it's a show that we started back in Ramadan and we've been continuing it once a week outside Ramadan. And what we've been doing in these past few weeks, the past month that we've been doing this, is we've been live streaming, detailing the lessons that we do at the Islamic Diversity Center for those that are new Muslims, those that are converts, or those that are newly practicing to the religion. We've been live streaming the sessions, so hopefully you guys can benefit online. And what we've been doing in the last month is we did a prayer workshop session. So we did different weekly sessions. One was on what is the prayer, the virtue of the prayer. The week after was on about the wudu, the ablution, the washing. How do we do it? We've done one on actions of prayer. How do we do the actions of prayer? And different things. But what we want to do today is that as it is the Islamic month of Dhul Hijjah, we really want to talk about how we can benefit from this month as somebody who's a new Muslim, somebody who's a convert, how we can really benefit and understand the purpose of Dhul Hijjah. I know for myself that when I became Muslim, I heard a lot about Ramadan. I heard a lot about fasting and things like this. But Dhul Hijjah and some of the Islamic months, the Islamic calendar, I didn't necessarily know a lot about. I didn't necessarily understand the importance of it. So I thought it was good to do this short lesson to talk about different things, talk about what is Dhul Hijjah, talk about its virtues and its importance, talk about something called the Udhiyah or the Qurbani or the sacrifice that is part of it. Talk a bit about Hajj, as this month is a month in which the pilgrimage is done, and basically have an opportunity to answer any questions that people may have. So inshallah, as you go along, you can ask the questions in the chat, and inshallah, we can all benefit. But I'm joined by some different brothers here who are watching it live in the studio that we're doing. So we've got brother Alex. Assalamu alaikum, Alex.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
How you doing? Are you okay?
Yes, I'm very good. I'm hoping to learn something tonight.
Good. And we've got brother Mark. Assalamu alaikum, Mark.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Good, good. And we've got Kin coming in. How you doing, Kin? Can you hear me? Maybe not. But yeah, so inshallah we're gonna go through Dhul Hijjah, talk about what it is and how we can benefit from the month. Kin, sadly we can't hear you. I don't know if you want to be on mic or not. So guys, I was to ask you about this month called Dhul Hijjah. Would you guys know anything about it? Have you read anything online? Have you attended any lessons or anything? Or is it all going to be hopefully new?
Well, I don't know whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, but I know when I've been on holiday at this time of the year, one of the farmers bring an animal in, like a sheep, a goat, or a cow.
Okay, good.
They take it to the masjid, and I don't know, I think they chop it all up and give it to the people,
good,
basically, who haven't got anything to eat.
Good. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is, in this month, obviously there's the first 10 days in which is the Hajj or the pilgrimage period. So people right now are in Mecca, they're performing the pilgrimage and things like that. That's happening right now. At the end of this, there is on the day of Eid, because it's the second Eid, the second celebration, there is people do a sacrifice in which they buy a lamb, they buy a sheep, they buy a cow, they buy a camel, for example. They would obviously sacrifice it, and then the meat would go to themselves, would go to their friends and family, and then they would give a large proportions of it to the poor and the needy. And we'll talk about why we do that. But I think one of the key things is obviously those that are less fortunate can benefit from the days of Eid. They can celebrate, they can have meat. Because what's really interesting is for us, we have meat every single day or very often. But for many people in the world, meat is actually like a luxury. It's something that simply they can't afford. So this opportunity allows them to have meat on the day and to benefit from it. So cool. So let's make a start. So I want to start with exactly, okay, what is Dhul Hijjah? And basically all that it is that It's the 12th Islamic month in the Islamic calendar. So what's interesting about the Islamic calendar is that it's actually a lunar calendar. It's different from the Gregorian calendar that we normally follow. The Gregorian calendar is based on the movement of the sun, so it's a solar calendar, whereas the Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar. It's based on the movements of the moon. So how it works is every time the moon has a new hilal, as it has a new, it changes in its size, becomes a full moon, it becomes smaller, it becomes a crescent moon. That's how it's based. Every time there's a new moon, there's a new month. So it could be 28 days, it could be 29 days, depending on the sighting of the moon and how it works. So instead of looking at the sun, it works based on the moon. And there's other calendars that are like this. I believe the Jewish calendar is similar, and other calendars. And there are 12 different months. The first is Muharram, the second is Safar, the third is Rabi al-Awwal, the fourth is Rabi al-Thani, and then there's Jamada al-Awwal and Jamada al-Thani. There's Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan, which is the one that we've heard a lot about and which we fast. The 10th month is Shawwal, and the 11th and 12th month is Dhul Qidah and Dhul Hijjah. Dhul Qa'idah and Dhul Hijjah. So the last month is Dhul Hijjah, which is the one that we're in. Then after that, at the end of the month, there'll be a new Islamic year. So, Alex, as you were saying before, we were in 1441. At the end of Dhul Hijjah, in 28 days, it'll be a new year. It'll be 1442. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So that's it. It's just one of the Islamic months. And each of these months, some of them have different virtues. Some of them you do certain things. So, for example, Ramadan is known as one of the best months. It's a month of fasting. It's a month of charity. And each of them, there are certain things in which you do. So we skip to... Cool. So Dhul Hijjah is a month that has special virtues. So what we'll learn often is that Allah has given certain times and certain months certain virtues. So, for example, a month of Ramadan has a huge virtue. It's fasting, good deeds are accepted. It's a month of reading the Quran. It's a month of giving charity. But there are certain times that Allah has given virtue to. So, for example, the last third of the night, the Prophet, peace upon him, he said that Allah descends to the lowest heaven in the last third of the night. So, a person, if we got up to pray in that night and asked for forgiveness, there's a virtue to that time. As well, the last 10 nights of Ramadan, there's a virtue on those nights as well to get up to pray, to give charity, to do good deeds. So throughout the year, there are certain months, certain times, certain situations that have more virtue than other times. And one of the things about Dhul Hijjah is that the first 10 days have a huge virtue. And they're actually the best 10 days in the entire year. The best 10 days in which you can do good deeds are these days. The best 10 days in which the rewards are multiplied are these days. So the Prophet, peace upon him, he said that there are no days in which righteous deeds are more beloved to Allah than these 10 days. So these 10 days, any good deed that you do is more beloved to Allah than if you did it in any other day. So the people asked the question, not even jihad, meaning going out and fighting for the sake of Allah. He said, not even going out and fighting for the sake of Allah, except in the case of a man who went out to fight, giving himself and his wealth up for the cause and came back with nothing. So imagine there's a situation where, let's say, there's a war, a country, Islamic country's been attacked, you're defending yourself and your people. That's obviously a great thing to do, self-defense and to fight against oppression. And if a person did that, there's a huge virtue. But the Prophet's highlighting here that if you did deeds in these 10 days, it'd be better than that. Than if for a person, he went out, he gave all his wealth, and he actually gave his life for that cause, that would be better. But the point is to highlight that it has a huge virtue. And these days, if you give charity, if you help your neighbor, if you gain beneficial knowledge, there's going to be a huge reward in it. And one thing that's really key about this month as well is that it's the month in which the Hajj, the pilgrimage, is performed. So, and this is the month in which people go to Mecca from all across the world, millions of people. Millions of people from different backgrounds, different countries, different ages, different status in society. They all travel to Mecca to perform the pilgrimage, and it lasts during these 10 days in which they do certain acts of worship. Obviously, this year it's a bit different because of the coronavirus situation. Only people that are currently in Saudi Arabia can perform the pilgrimage, and sadly, they're not accepting people from outside of Saudi Arabia, which makes sense with the virus and the situation. It's not necessarily safe, but normally millions of people go. You can actually watch the live streams of this year, previous year, which you see all these people coming together, regardless where they're from. So that shows another virtue to it, that one of the 5 pillars of the religion is actually performed in this month. So these are some of the virtues, and that's why it's really, really encouraged to benefit from the month as much as we can. So there are different things that I would advise somebody who is new to try and do. There are many different deeds, many different things. I sort of thought of 10 ideas. One would be maybe doing extra prayers. So there are the compulsory prayers, which you must do 5 prayers a day. But maybe you could do extra prayers. So, for example, maybe you prayed extra at night, or maybe you prayed extra prayers before the morning prayer, and things like this. Maybe throughout your day, you could try and set some more time in the day in which you're going to try and perform more prayers. You could also read the Quran. You could also, pick up the Quran, try and read it. If you know Arabic, try and read it in Arabic. And if you don't necessarily know Arabic, then possibly you can read the English translation or the translation in a language that you know. That's going to be beneficial. You're going to learn what is the Quran saying, what is the meanings, because one of the purposes behind the Quran is to really understand it and to benefit from it. The third thing that I said is that you could gain beneficial knowledge. So, for example, you could read a beneficial book on Islam. You could attend a lesson or a lecture such as this. You could go on YouTube, try and watch something beneficial from a speaker that you like or you listen to. Could maybe visit the local mosque, attend a lesson. Try and do something beneficial with your time, not necessarily things that are not beneficial. Fourth one, which I think is a huge one, which many people do, is something that's really encouraged, is to give the charity. So give charity. Maybe you donate to a specific charity. Maybe you donate to someone that you know who's in need and needs help. Try and give as much as you can, because the rewards are going to be multiplied and these deeds are going to be more beneficial for you. Fifth one is to perform the sacrifice that we discussed, and we'll talk about more. The Qurbani, as it's called, or the Udhiyah, in which you would sacrifice an animal and give the meat to the poor and the needy. Number 6, you can make extra dua or supplication. Ask Allah for more things, ask Allah for help, maybe in the morning prayer, maybe after your prayers, maybe throughout the day. One thing that is also encouraged is to make extra dhikr. And dhikr is remembrance of Allah. So, for example, saying Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. This is all remembrance of Allah. So you can increase throughout the day. So maybe when you enter your house, you say Bismillah. When you are walking on the street, you can say this remembrance. Or you could listen to the Quran in your house in the Arabic and the English meaning. These are all forms of remembrance of God, which you could try and do. 8, I put to make something called Toba. Toba is repentance. So you've made a sin, you've done something that's wrong. You sincerely ask Allah, you ask God to forgive you for what you've done, and you try and make amends. So let's say you've got a negative habit. Let's say you've made some mistakes in the past. You would try and repent to Allah and try and change your ways. Because the Prophet, we know that the Prophet, peace upon him, it's narrated that he would make repentance to Allah 100 times a day. So throughout his day, he was repenting to Allah for the mistakes that he made. 9th one, which is a good one, is fasting. So obviously we fast in Ramadan, but you can also fast outside of Ramadan. And these 10 days, you could do an optional fast. So, for example, you could fast Thursday, abstaining from food and drink throughout the day, and there'd be rewards for this. You could do this again. And then 10th, I put a general one, which would be helping others, doing any sort of good deed, whether that's donating food to a cause, giving food to your neighbor, whether it's simply calling your family, calling relatives, checking how they are. Could be visiting a friend, visiting someone who's ill. It could be sharing some beneficial knowledge on WhatsApp or on the internet, or calling an old friend up, helping someone across the road, helping your neighbor. Just anything that is going to be good and helping others. This is something that you could do in these 10 days. So these are 10 ideas that I had. But Alex and Mark, did you have any ideas that you would recommend? Maybe good deeds that you could do in these 10 days? Any ideas?
You pretty much covered it, I think.
Yeah, I did quite a lot. Fasting, charity, helping others.
Yeah. The other thing is that you could have a spring clean.
Okay, good.
In your house, go through all your books and everything. And the books that you've read and you don't need, you could pass them down to people who are learning.
That's a good idea. Like many of us, we have books that necessarily we don't benefit from, or we don't read, or we've got 2 copies of. So you could go through and give that to benefit others. You could, for example, you've got loads of clothes that you don't wear anymore, old clothes. You could donate them to charity for people to wear, or for them to sell them and then give the money to poor people. I think it's a good idea because cleanliness is also important in Islam. The Prophet, peace be upon him, he said that cleanliness is half of your faith. So to be, have a clean of the house, get rid of old books, old clothing that can benefit people. Definitely, I think that'd be a good idea. Any ideas, Mark?
No, I mean, the clothing thing I was sort of set to do, but the charity shops are closed. I don't know whether you can take clothes down to the mosque or...
That's good. So I know in Newcastle, and I assume if you drove to Middlesbrough, it'd be the same. But they have often clothing banks, like they're just boxes, which you put clothing in. So I know in Newcastle they had One Ummah, which is a charity, had some. Islamic Relief had some at the mosque. So if you go to the mosque, they had these big bins that you could put like old clothes in, and which the charity then collects them and then obviously gives them out. So I'm pretty sure if you go to Middlesbrough Central Mosque, they have it in the car park. There's like this massive deposit box. But there's a website. If you go on Islamic Relief or One Ummah, I can send you it afterwards. You type your postcode in, and they generally tell you where's the closest drop-off point.
Okay.
So that's what we did during, I think, months ago when the virus began. Everything was shut, so we just went to one of the local boxes and put our donated clothes in there. So
yeah, because we've had a lot of trouble in Middlesbrough and that because they have the boxes in like Tesco car park and Asda.
Yeah,
a lot of
people go through it.
Indians are going in and pinching it all and just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's an issue. I went to one of them and someone had took all the stuff out and it's all over the floor and people.
Yeah.
So it is it's an issue. But I think if you go, for example, the mosque, I know the mosque in Newcastle, they normally obviously close it and it's in the premises, so it's less likely that someone's going to jump in and try. But the ones that are in car parks are a bit easier. So maybe have a look.
Bring them when I come up to meet you.
Yeah, you could do. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Or maybe ask Zahir. Maybe Zahir knows. I know Zahir helps with One Ummah and other charities. He might know it. Maybe at his centre they have something.
Yeah.
I
mean, Alex.
You've just hit on a very good point there, that because of this month, instead of asking for help for yourself, why don't we ask for people who do that sort of thing where they just rummage through for no reason whatsoever? You know, like what you were on about with the clothes and everything. They were all scattered all over the place. It's a totally senseless act.
Yeah.
And I think we should really ask Allah to try and maybe persuade them not to do them sort of things.
Definitely, I think that would come under, obviously, I mentioned supplication, asking Allah to make people better, to cure the situation, to help people around the world. You could do that. But obviously, in these situations, I guess you don't necessarily know what's their situation. Maybe they're struggling, or maybe they are taking it to sell. Yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, it's just sad. But again, if you do one that I guess is in the mosque premises, it's going to be less likely to have those issues. But the point is that these 10 days, try and pick some different categories. So, for example, every day I'm going to give £5 to charity. And maybe on a Thursday, I'm going to fast. Maybe on a Friday, I'm going to visit my relatives and see how they are. And Saturday, maybe I'll call an old friend and see how he's doing. Sunday, I might do the shopping for my neighbor who's old, for example, to help them out. Basically, just try and do things that are beneficial and they're going to help others. And basically, with this time, try and do things that are good. So cool. The next thing, which is so I think something for me, which is quite in the culture, something maybe it's not strange, but something that we don't really do, which is this concept of a sacrifice. I think obviously in Judaism and Christianity in the past, it was a common thing to do this sacrifice, but in our culture today, it's not really a thing that you do. You just normally buy meat to eat. You never seem to do it to give it to others. So in Islam, there's something called the udhiyah, or the qurbani, as it's often called, which is in which a person would slaughter an animal. So, for example, it could be a sheep that is 6 months or older, could be a goat, it could be a cow, it could be a camel, depending where you are in the world or depending what you want to do. And you would sacrifice it during the days of Eid al-Adha. So what it means is on Eid, which is on the 10th of the month, any of the 3 days after that is when the sacrifice is. So you do the Eid prayer in the morning, and then afterwards people would do their sacrifice and give it out to people in need. But the point here is what's different from just maybe by doing it yourself is that there's an intention that you're doing it for the sacrifice. You're doing it to get closer to Allah. You're doing it to benefit others. It's something that many scholars said it's sunnah mu'akkada. So it's something that is highly recommended to do. But it's not necessarily compulsory. So it's highly recommended to do for those that are able to do it. So those that have the wealth and the money and the ability, whether a man or a woman, it's for everyone, that they should try and do a sacrifice, either themselves or donate to an organization that can do it, so that they can give the food to those in need. And a man can do it on behalf of his family. So, for example, the husband, he could do it on behalf of his wife and his children. He could do that. That's fine. Or each person could do one individually. It's up to them. So what you would do is, for example, you got different options. Option one is you could actually get a sheep or a goat yourself. So, for example, I know my friend, he lives in Mozambique, which is in Africa. What they would do is they would get their sheep and they would look after it in the back garden. And then on the day of Eid, they would actually sacrifice it themselves and then, take the skin off and give the meat out to friends and family and to the poor. The second option that you could do is that you could speak to your local butcher. You could say, okay, I'm going to do the sacrifice. Can you arrange for me to get it done? And then they would do that and they would give you the meat yourself. And many scholars say to give a third of the meat for yourself, give a third to your friends and family, and then give a third to the poor. Or something that is common, which is what I did and what many people do, is you would donate to a specific charity in which they would do it on your behalf. So you could do it in the UK, you could do it abroad in Yemen, or you could do it in Syria, or you could do it in Pakistan or Bangladesh or Africa, any sort of place that you can. So, for example, myself, I donate to a charity that I'm going to give it in Yemen because there's currently a famine there. People are struggling, in which they buy the animal, they do the sacrifice, and they give the meat to the poor. So there are different charities: Islamic Relief, One Ummah, Crisis Aid. There are many out there. So, for example, you would give them the money, they would buy the animal and give it. But what's key is that if a person wishes to offer the sacrifice, it's narrated that he shouldn't remove his nails or his hair. So the Prophet, peace upon him, said, whoever wants to offer the udhiyah when the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah begin, let him not remove anything of his hair or his nails. So for the 10 days, you wouldn't get a haircut, you wouldn't cut your nails, up until you give the sacrifice. Then on Eid, you can cut your hair and cut your nails. The point of this sacrifice, there are many reasons behind it. One of them is that it's one of the signs of Islam. It's one of the signs of the religion that Muslims are known to do this sacrifice and to give it to the poor and to help people. But one of the reasons behind it is based on the story of Abraham or Ibrahim, which I'm sure you may know from the Bible. It's also mentioned in the Quran, in which Abraham was informed by Allah to sacrifice his son. But as he was going to do it, it was replaced with a lamb. And then Abraham sacrificed that lamb. So similarly, what we do is we do the same thing, because it's part of the Hajj. One of the things you do on the Hajj at the end is you do the sacrifice, imitating what Abraham did. So that's where it comes from. That's why it's done. And to be honest, I think it's a great thing that people on the day of Eid who don't have the money to buy meat, or people that many haven't eaten meat in the entire year, they get the opportunity to celebrate, to have a good meal, and to benefit from it. And then at the end of the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, the beginning of the month, there is the second Eid celebration, which is called Eid al-Adha. So there's Eid al-Fitr, which is at the end of Ramadan, and then there's Eid al-Adha, which is at the end of the Hajj season. Happens when the pilgrims complete their pilgrimage, and it's a day of celebration in which you would celebrate with friends and family. And there are a number of recommended things to do. So one of them is that you would have a ghusl, a bath, a shower in the morning before going to the prayer on this day. There's a special prayer. Number 2, it's recommended not to eat before going to the prayer, but instead eat after the prayer. And the reason is because after the prayer, you would normally do your sacrifice, the meat. You would cook your meal and you would share it with people. The third thing that's recommended to do is to raise something called the takbir, which is to say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd, or words of praise of God on these days. So you would say on all the 10 days, you would say it throughout the day, and you would say it going to the Eid prayer up until the 13th of the month. The fourth one, which is encouraged, is to offer congratulations. You would say Eid Mubarak, blessed Eid, to friends, family, send text messages, give out cards to people. One thing that's encouraged on the day of Eid, if you're going to the Eid prayer and if you're visiting friends and family, is to really put nice new clothes on, to look good, to put perfume on. Many people buy new clothes to look good. So basically, adorn yourself and look nice. A sixth thing that's encouraged to do is to go to the Eid prayer one way, and when you're coming back to your house, to go a different way. And the seventh thing, which is encouraged, is to give gifts to friends and family. So it's a day of celebration where you visit your friends and family, you would give them a gift, and to really benefit from the day. So Eid al-Adha is going to be next Friday the 31st, in Newcastle. They're planning to do it, I believe, in IKEA car park. So they've hired out the car park in which they're going to do the Eid prayer. So you would go to the prayer in the morning. You would perform the Eid prayer. And then afterwards, there's normally a sermon or a talk. Then after that, you would, celebrate with friends and family. This year, obviously, a bit different again because of the coronavirus situation. There's going to have to be social distancing and restrictions. But on most years, I know often there'd be food going out, there would be football games, there would be rides for the children, a sort of day of celebrating and benefiting from the day. So guys, any questions or anything that was maybe unclear, would you say?
No, I think this is about the best thing that you can get out of Islam. Islam is very straightforward.
That's one thing I liked as well, is that I know obviously I was raised Christian, but obviously left Christianity, became an atheist. But I know with Islam, everything's clear. There's always a reference in the Quran. There's always the Prophet explain things. So whenever I had a question about, okay, what do I need to do? Often in Christianity, they didn't really have an answer. It was just people not sure, or the Bible didn't maybe speak about it. But I know in Islam, everything was always clear. So here we're told, exactly what to do. Why do we do it? So I agree, Alex. I think everything's pretty simple and clear.
That's what makes Islam so perfect, really, because no matter where you go in the world, whether you go to the North Pole or the South Pole and pick a Quran up, it's the same as what it is in America, Mexico, and Peru. It's never altered.
So I think the key things from this is Dhul Hijjah is one of the Islamic months. It's a special month. There's virtue in the first 10 days. It's the month in which if you went to go perform the pilgrimage, and just really in these 10 days to do beneficial deeds and try and celebrate on the day of Eid. But any questions, guys, about anything or?
One, it's probably a silly question, but were you on about the donation and the slaughter, etc.?
Yeah.
You said you could go and pay a butcher and they'd do it. And could you just sponsor a butcher to give it out to people anyway?
Yeah, so I think that's part of the when you give it to say a charity, that's sort of sponsoring a butcher. You know, you give them the money, they would go get the animal, they would sacrifice it and give it out to people. So yeah, you can do that. And,
The butchers I use.
huh?
Could I go direct to the butchers that I use?
So I know. So you'd have to go to like a halal Islamic butcher.
Yeah,
So I know, for example, in Newcastle, many people go to the Newcastle halal, or they go to the butcher in Newcastle.
yeah.
They speak to him and say, "Look, I need to do it," and he arranges in the slaughterhouse for them to do it. And then they normally give you the meat, and then you can give it out. But I'm pretty sure if you spoke to them, maybe they could find people that need the meat.
If you sponsored them towards it and you don't want the meat yourself, and they would give it out.
I'm pretty sure if you speak to Zahir, or if you go to Middlesbrough or whatever and speak to the butcher, I'm pretty sure they'd do it.
Right.
Obviously the thing in the UK is often there are people that need it, to be honest, but obviously generally people don't necessarily need it as much as in other countries.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could do. From what I know in Newcastle people do that. They speak to the butcher. He arranges in the slaughterhouse the animal, and then he either gives you the meat or he gives it out to people who need it.
Right.
So.
Good.
Or the easier way is to just go on like a Islamic charity website and donate. So it depends as well. It depends like what type of animal you want to do. So if you want to do a sheep, a goat, are generally cheaper. But if you want to do a cow, it's obviously more. And again, it depends often what country. So for example, countries that are war torn, it's obviously more expensive than say countries that are a bit more advanced. So I've seen places that you can do it for £20. If you want to do it, for example, in Yemen, it's £100. I've seen in Palestine, it's like 150. So the prices vary depending on which country and what sort of thing. But if you're just doing it for yourself, you would just get like a sheep. That'd be fine.
Okay.
But again, like I said, obviously you don't necessarily have to do it. It's only if many scholars said, only if you have the wealth and if you have the ability, then you should do it. So cool. Any questions, guys? Is that pretty clear?
Okay.
Yeah, clear. Yes.
Awesome. That's it. I think that's a good summary. Obviously, it's a specific topic. Well, have you guys got any questions about anything in general, or no worries if you don't?
Well, the question is, why is everybody so evil? And why is everybody serious?
Yeah,
why is
it's good.
everybody so evil? And why is everybody so I don't know, sort of bad mouthing Islam when it's got nothing to do with Islam?
My personal view is I think it's just simply lack of knowledge that
Ignorance.
many people have never met a Muslim. Like I know myself, when I was in Middlesbrough, the majority of people that I met were not Muslim, so I never met a Muslim. So all the only knowledge that they have is what they've seen on TV or what they've heard from negatively from people. But I think when people actually meet a Muslim, when they actually interact with Muslims, but not necessarily Muslims, but when they actually start reading, okay, what does Islam really teach? Then they'll realize, okay, what I thought was wrong. But most people are not really interested in learning. They're too busy working. They're too busy, I don't know, doing their own thing. Especially in this day and age, people are very materialistic. They're not really looking into religion or looking into things. So that's why people have these bad ideas. That's why people think negative. Because I think as well, it can seem something scary and strange. Like if something's foreign or strange to you, it can seem very worrying. But that's why like what IDC do, where they go into schools, they go into the universities and things like this, and speak to people about Islam. It normalizes it. I know, especially a lot of younger people who have Muslim friends in school or at university, they're less, I guess, scared of Islam or scared of Muslims because they've actually had that. They've actually spoke to a Muslim. They get on with a Muslim. They've gone for food, and they realize that okay, we have similar things. We have similar goals. We're normal human beings, like everybody else. So I think that's often the issue.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this week I got a small video that I think that was posted. I don't know whether anybody's seen it about the Christian side of churches.
The what? Sorry,
it's about the Christian churches.
Okay.
Basically, there's a couple of cathedrals in the country
Hmm.
that hold like 1,000 people
Okay.
on a Sunday. And I think it was 3 weeks ago, the most in one of the biggest cathedrals for a Sunday service was 12 people.
Yeah, I think
And all the local churches that hold like 200-300, they're down to like 3 and 4, maybe a dozen on a good day. The only time they actually get anything is like the English Christmas and the English Easter and the birth, the deaths, and the marriages. Other than that,
I think, especially, I know in the UK that there is a sort of a crisis in Christianity that people, most people might say they're Christian, but not really religious. So not many people are going to the church. Not people are going unless it's a funeral, it's a christening, or a wedding.
Yeah.
But for myself, that was sort of when I grew up. That was really Christianity. We didn't really go that often. Like it was only a wedding or a christening. That was only whenever you went to the Church of England church. And I think in Europe in general, that's sort of going away. However, what's interesting in America though is that it's still really big. You know, people have thousands of people are going to the church. They have these mega churches that have millions of pounds. But I know in the UK, Church of England, even Catholicism, Protestantism, the service numbers are very, very low. There could be many reasons for that. But yeah, I agree. I think it is interesting.
I think it's a good time for people to try and maybe understand a little bit about Islam. Not to convert them or anything else, but just to give them a light idea and put a little bit of interest in their head to say, yeah, well, just have a little read at this and tell me what you think.
Definitely. Like that's one of the things that for IDC was, it's not to convert people, it was just to raise awareness. You know, people have questions, to answer their questions. People want to understand. Because I think that's progress. If somebody was hostile and now they're not hostile and they know a bit about Islam, that's progress.
Yeah.
Cool. So awesome, guys. Alhamdulillah, that's it. Talking about Dhul Hijjah and the benefits. We'll be back with another lesson on a different topic soon. But I want to thank everybody for listening. If you have any questions or anything, they can drop it in the chat or they can reach out to Newcastle Fast FM. Inshallah, we'll be back for another session soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.